Hi guys, my name is Isabella Greene, and today I would like to share with you my process of emotional processing. I hope that this helps you when you are facing the need to do your emotional processing. This has helped me a lot, and it helped me to move from into a completely new reality, completely new state of being. As you know, we go along in our lives and we face or we become aware of specific states of being and specific energetic imprints and specific cellular memories that are literally running our lives, that became our patterns of behavior or our patterns of our emotional states. And so once we become aware of that, if we are uncomfortable with what's going on, and if that's creating patterns that are self-sabotaging or really patterns that are not in alignment with our journeys, then we want to do emotional processing to release that. Emotional processing is also really good for us because it releases the energy, the old stuck energy. It creates room for the new energy to come in so that we can create the new states of being for ourselves and move higher in our frequencies too. So recently, this month in December, a lot of people, including myself, processed guilt, shame, and judgment. And judgment creates guilt and shame. Judgment creates a state of unworthiness. So that's one whole big package. As we know, parenting in old days was very much based on guilting and shaming. And the whole system of human relationships is based on judgment. You know, everyone is judged against someone else. Everyone is judged by their qualities, by what they do, but what they own, by how they behave. It literally, there's nothing we can do in this old paradigm that someone is not going to be judging, right? Or someone is not going to be unhappy with and tell us about it or judge us for it. So judgment is a really big one, and we really carry imprints of that from very, very early on. Only the very lucky ones who had no incarnations on earth have no karmic imprints of judgment. Judgment led to pretty much all wars and inquisition and all different kinds of things, because and hate and judgment is like the underlying human condition or the state of a human being when one is judged against the other, and all kinds of conflict arises. Mainly the internal conflict that we're talking about. So judgment creates a state of shame, and the state of shame is linked to what we think we are. We're ashamed of what we are. And the state of guilt, we feel guilty for what we do. So that there's a little bit of a difference, but that all package triggered by judgment or generated through judgment, guilt, shame, unworthiness is the third part of it. So when the child is shamed and guilted, shamed for who they are, oh, you're a bad girl, you did all this, so you're a bad boy. So there we have shame and guilt together. That creates, in the long run, that creates a state of unworthiness. I'm no good, I can do no good, and I can be no good, and there is the root of your unworthiness. And that starts really early on. That's passed on from generation to generation. That's the karmic history of humanity. That's the system. Also, that's the system of control as well, you know, because unworthiness is paralyzing. Shame is paralyzing. Guilt is paralyzing. When we feel unworthy, we have a really, really hard time expressing ourselves. We have a really, really hard time bringing forth our gift. So it works for the system really well. Judgment based on material possessions and status and God knows, I mean, just about everything, right? Works really well for the system as well, to keep us within, within the structure of the matrix. Okay, so all that said, December brought the processing of judgment for a lot of people. Here's how it worked for me, and here's how I moved through that process. I use this process for all emotional processing. So hopefully you are able to use the same process for all of your emotional processing too, or if you have your own process, maybe they will add something for you too. I was not aware of how much cellular memory I carried in my body, the cellular memory of judgment. I really had no idea because I've done so much work already, so this is like level 3 or 33, 333 in the video game of emotional processing, right? Oh, I thought way back when I looked at all like unworthiness, guilt, shame, and judgment, and it's gone, right? Well, no, not really. As we become more and more aware of ourselves, as our frequencies get higher and higher, we find more and more intricate patterns that are hidden deeper and deeper in our subconscious space. So something triggered the feeling, some external event, and hey, there are plenty of external events that can trigger the feeling of unworthiness and the sense of, oh God, I'm being judged, right? And that's not an unpleasant place, so I kind of was like, yeah, I'm not looking at this. And as you refuse to look at it, it goes even deeper into subconscious, like, oh, it's not there, I'm not seeing it, I refuse to look at it. So it did. And then all of a sudden this month in December, I started waking up every morning. I would do my meditation, I feel amazing, my life didn't change, everything is the same, all good stuff happening. All of a sudden I'm waking up into this feeling, and the feeling is suffocating, like around here in the chest, the arms, almost feels like fear, but not really fear, and I'm going, what is this feeling? And I really could not tell, so I sat in meditations night after night, asking that same question, and all of a sudden I remembered what that feeling felt like, or where it actually started from. So what came into my memory through that feeling was a saying that my mother was repeating since I remember myself, and that saying was basically that was in Russian, so I'm trying to translate that right now. The saying was something like, no matter what the fool does, he's an idiot. No matter what the fool does, it's stupid, right? So that was like straight out that thing. And I grew up with that mantra, and that was the mantra that was addressed unto me, unto myself. So I couldn't do right. I could not do one thing right. My mom always said that thing to me, so my mind remembered that very well. And then of course, I went on into my life, and I kept that was the mantra of my life, so I kept getting proof of that from everywhere, at least the feeling of that in my life, whether I did right, or there was always, by me, but there was always someone who would judge me, and I would get that feeling. But that mantra, that little poem, it's like a form of a little poem that mom repeated, that kind of went so deep out of my memory. I had no idea. So here I'm sitting in the meditation, pulling on that feeling. You literally, if you're experiencing that feeling, like, it's choking you, that feeling of discomfort, start pulling on that feeling. Where did that feeling start from? You're going to start remembering events in your life that generated that same exact feeling. The events linked between each other, and they're usually periodic, meaning it's happening, not periodic, but regular. It's constantly happening. You're constantly experiencing that feeling. So from the present moment, you can literally trace that feeling. When did I feel this way the last time? When did I feel this way the time before? When did I feel this way the first time? And so I literally had to sit for 4 hours in the meditation. Thank God, it was my day off the next day, so I said, hey, you know what, I'm sitting here until I find that the beginning of this in this lifetime anyway. So I started digging and digging and digging, and I remembered, like, that mom's poem came into my memory. After that, I started remembering all of the events that made me feel the same way. So the feeling that I was experiencing in my body matched. As soon as that poem came into my memory, I experienced that feeling so strong. I was like, oh my God, that's where that came from, or at least this is as far as I can go right now to remember through this lifetime. And then I started pulling on that and going, oh my God, and here and here and here and here and here, and through the jobs and through relationships and through connections and friendships and events and this and that, and there was always that feeling, like sooner or later that feeling would show up, and it matched that mom's poem exactly to the T. And so that's an imprint, that's an imprint, that's an emotional imprint. And what did it make me feel? It made me feel shame, that, I'm a fool, I can do no good. It made me feel guilt for making mistakes. If I made a mistake, I'm a fool, I can do no good. So I feel guilty, right? It made me feel unworthy. There is nothing, no matter what the fool does, the fool is wrong, or he can do no good, or she can do no good. So that's a very strong base for growing up with the sense of unworthiness on some level. On an intense level, regardless of all the processing later. So you sit and you pull on the memories in, and that's gonna feel really gross, I tell you. That was uncomfortable, and once I kind of got the whole picture made me understand very well why I kept recreating that pattern. All of these events that seemingly happen to you, they're all reflecting the pattern of the internal state of being. So once I observed all of these events that I cared to observe, and that took me 4 hours to remember all that, well, less than 4, because the second part was to let go. And how do we let go? Well, I facilitated a timeline change for myself. So I started doing intense breathing. There are different breathing techniques that you can do, and please look up the breathing techniques. There is prana breath that Dr. Joe Dispenza offers. There is a breathing technique where you breathe really intensely through your mouth, 2 inhales in and 1 inhale out for 10 minutes, then hold your breath, and then do another 10 minutes and hold your breath. It really kind of knocks you out. It puts you in a state where you can really shift dimensions and shift between realities here. So I started doing that breathing, and I was saying, that's it, this is no longer my story. I'm letting go of this story, not my story anymore. I know the story now. I can see that. I can clearly understand what happened, how it was created. I can clearly link that moment with the feeling that I'm still experiencing. I'm not even aware of that. Now I'm aware of it, right? So I'm just letting go through the breath, letting go of that stuff. And the next thing, if you do a lot of that breathing, you just pull out all the stories out of your cells. What happened with me was I was experiencing waves of heat, like every event that I would pull and be like, this is out of my life, this is gone, this is no longer my story, I'm letting go, I'm going in the timeline when none of that is linked to me, to my present moment. I was experiencing these waves of heat, so that's cellular memories being released from the body. That's the healing of energetics as well. And so I arrived at the space where I was like out of it, you know. So basically I left the physical form, and I'm floating in the void. I'm floating in the space of all potentials. All potentials are available. And so here you want to focus your potential. You want to focus your attention on full acceptance, complete acceptance. Going forward from this moment and on, you just shed that, you just let go of that old timeline. Whatever you found, you cleaned out, and you now are moving yourself onto the timeline where the full acceptance is available. You know what? I found out that I had no idea what it feels like, actually. You want to generate the feeling where you are fully accepted on every level, without judgment, without shame and guilt, and unworthiness is nowhere to be present. You're fully accepted by external reality and by your internal reality. Your internal state of being determines the external reality very much more. It's a reflection, literally, you know. So you want to go into that space. Well, I found out that I had no idea, that I literally never experienced that before. There's always been this voice, you know, the voice, so that's not the voice, the feeling of, yeah, you know, being judged, that no matter what you do, you're being judged. So creating that new space where you're not being judged, where you can actually within your own self feel what it feels like to be fully accepted. That's the work here. So that was my other, you know, the part of my 4-hour meditation was to really anchor that feeling. What does it feel like? What does it feel like to be fully seen and fully accepted? We are not familiar with that. So let's create that. Let's co-create that. Let's create the timeline. Let's move ourselves onto the timeline where we are experiencing full acceptance. Well, after much ado, you know, and I kept noticing that, wow, I have no idea how it feels like. I was able to create that, how it feels, and move myself into that space. Why I know that I moved myself into that space is because I had another multidimensional, non-physical twin flame experience immediately after that, and I'll tell you about it in a different video, which was absolutely mind-blowing. But for the present moment of December 2017, whatever clearing needed to be done was done. I woke up the next morning, so after all that work I slept a little bit, and I woke up the next morning not only to find out that quite a few members of my team were going through the same processing, or not, maybe not exactly the same process, but the processing of the same issue, the judgment versus acceptance, acceptance versus judgment. But I also felt like a completely different person. That feeling was no longer there. It's been a couple of days, so that was pushed. We're pushed towards that opening and the portals are opening, right? We're pushed towards entering the portal energy as purified and cleansed internally as we possibly can, even clearing the issues that we are not even aware of ourselves, but you would know about them through that feeling in you. So follow the feeling, recall the events that are all linked through that feeling. Keep pulling on those events and that feeling until you find the root cause. Well, even if it's not necessarily immediate root cause, because of course we could have inherited that from our parents. I know for sure that I inherited that from my mom and my dad both. And so that's a whole different part of that work, as in looking at the inner child and parenting, or receiving the inner child of the parents too. So that was done in the meditation also. That heals that whole pattern as well, from them into you. So receiving yourself, following that energy, following that feeling, recalling the events, then looking at the inner child of children of your parents who might have passed that on to you, refusing for that to be your story anymore, becoming fully aware of how that state of being created your reality, how you keep co-creating recreating the same old reality, and putting a stop on it. That's all it takes. You just have to make a decision that you're no longer going to play within that pattern, and then you can work on pulling in the new timeline, the timeline of acceptance. Reverse the feeling of unworthiness and judgment into the feeling of full acceptance of self, both from internally and externally. This for now should do the trick for you, and then you can continue cleaning up if stuff keeps coming up for you along the way. But this is like the majority of the work. So this is the process that I follow for all emotional processing, and I hope that this helps you and that my story inspires you to do the same. Please stay tuned for the video on the second part on twin flame, the non-physical twin flame connection that came in immediately after this was really all of that stuff was released. And I'll see you guys in space. If you'd like to have a mission, yes, if you'd like to have a session with me, you can reach me at isabellagreene.com. I love you. Take care. Namaste.